is Cynthia Miller. I'm here with the Cleveland Church, and this is my God story. I am from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and at the age of 5, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. That was a very hard time for me and my family, and not a lot of hope or peace was in that midst. A year afterwards, I was sexually abused by my neighbor up until the age of 11, and in that time, it just was never stopped. It was very hard, and just felt very lonely and hopeless. It was my fault, and that no one else knew what was going on. That came along with a feeling of entrapment in middle school when I was bullied, and going on into my freshman year of high school, a family member had unfortunately been murdered and was found on the side of a mountain. Growing up, there were some good times, but there were also some really hopeless situations where it was really hard to see God. It was really hard to understand God's goodness, or that God was good to me and that God loved me and had a hope for me. Going into my junior year of high school, I think was a time and a moment of when all this hopelessness kind of came all at once, and I had no idea how to handle the feelings that I was feeling and the emptiness that was inside. And unfortunately, I had not taken care of my diabetes and ended up with an A1C level that was twice the normal range, and from a physical standpoint wasn't doing too great, and I think from a spiritual and emotional standpoint was also not doing great. That was when I started to pray and ask God to show himself and show up. I asked God to show himself to me, and it was a really hard fight. I didn't understand a lot of things, but then God answered that. God brought some hope. When one day on campus, my freshman year of college, I was reached out to by a group of disciples and was invited to a spring retreat that just blew my mind. It blew me away in the way that I saw an authentic love from everyone for God, not just from groups of people, but also saw people my age striving to understand and to love God more, which inspired me to really study the Bible and understand what was different about these guys than what I knew growing up. After a really hard time studying the Bible and just trying to figure things out, and wrestling with my own pride and with God on what is my faith and what do I believe in, I was baptized on October 9th of 2016, and that was the greatest day of my entire life. From that point on, God had brought so much joy and hope and peace and love into my life. My brothers became disciples within my first year of being a disciple, and from that point on, I saw, many people that I went to high school with also became disciples. I made great friendships, and ultimately there was a hope for something that was bigger than myself. There was a hope that even if everything went so wrong on this earth, everything had gone so terrible, and the amount of pain and fear that I could be filled with, there was nothing that could replace the amount of joy and hope that one day the King would come back for me. For someone who has, felt so guilty over things that wasn't hers, or felt so fearful of the world, but that God gave me a courage. I have seen a huge difference in my family and just the way that I'm able to love my family. I, a lot of times, am also the one who is reminding of that hope and that promise that God has for us. And it's just been the best decision I've ever made. I think, even now with the with God bringing me out here to Cleveland, it's been really good to just see how God could take that hope and that love in a deeper way and show me how to trust Him even more, and how to wrestle with my pride and surrendering to what He has to say in a very deep way, in a way that I never would have thought was possible, or would have thought God would want me to go deeper into. Uh, and my entire life story just reminds me of the verse in Romans 15, verse 13, that says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." And that's really been my entire life, that once I became a disciple, there's just been this overarching hope that God has my back no matter what, even in the hardest of times.